Guillermo del Toro wants to tell you about scary stories and a new history lesson about editors. All this and more on Movie Emporium's News of the Day. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Movie Emporium's News of the Day, where we take stories from around the world of movies, break them down, and tell you about them one by one. If you like what you see, as always, remember to check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Audio Boom, and Twitter. Always subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Check us out, email us as well as enlapolo113@gmail.com. But with that, there's not much to go on today. There's not a lot of news stories, but there's some good news stories. So with that, we'll go ahead and go into our first news story, which is, Crazy Rich Asians just came out. Huge success. Made about $35 million over the 5-day period. One of the best rom-comedy openings in the history. They've decided to move on to the sequel, which is going to be called Crazy Rich Girlfriend. So I didn't know this, but apparently this is a book series. The whole Crazy Rich Asians is a series. Kevin Kwan has written like 6 or 7 books, somewhere around there. But I think this is awesome. I think the fact that this movie did well enough that they're warning a sequel already. They haven't greenlit it yet, but you know what's going to happen. They're going to bring back the same writers, the same cast. John M. Chu is going to come back to direct. I just think the fact that this movie was a success and the fact that it helped elevate a culture that you don't get to see very often. You know, Joy Luck Club was the first real Asian American movie that got put out, and that was like 25, 30 years ago. So it's nice to see that a movie like this has the success it had, because it leads to more possibilities and more movies about the nationality of Asians, or nationality of, whatever culture is, doesn't have a lot of movies. It's nice to see that a movie like this can help propel and open the gates, flood the gates of new ideas instead of just having the same old crap over and over again. So I really want to say congratulations to John Chu, congratulations to the cast of Crazy Rich Asians, congratulations to everyone who was involved in this project, because this is the kind of stuff that we need, and this is the kind of stuff we should be getting, and it just helps everything in the long run. So I like this story. I said there's like 6 or 7 books. There may be more, I'm not sure, but just congratulations to them. So, but with our next news story, all right, guys, you know how much I love Nine Inch Nails. I love Trent Reznor. I love what he's done throughout his career. His music is unique. It's industrialized. It's a special kind of music because it's very, very, it knows what it wants to be, but it does it in such an interesting, weird manner. I mean, you look at what the songs he's done throughout his career, and they're really disturbing songs, but they have a potent message to them. I mean, you look at stuff like Hurt, you look at stuff like Head Like a Hole, March of the Pigs, Hand That Feeds. He has a potent message with what he's trying to say. It's not always the most subtle, but the way he says it, it's a reason I'm a huge fan of Trent Reznor. So there's also a movie called Mid-90s coming out, which is a movie by Jonah Hill, his first, directorial debut. It's about a kid that grew up in the 90s, and, it looks very dark, but it looks a lot of fun. It kind of reminds you of what the 90s were in the skating world, and just growing up, and just, that era. If anybody grew up in the 90s, they know exactly what this movie is like. I'll put the trailer in the description, but it comes to find out in the report that Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor are going to do the score for this movie. That's kind of awesome, because I didn't think this movie was going to have a score like that, but that's going to make this movie more wholly unique than it is. I mean, if you watch the trailer, a lot of it's shot on like 4:3 aspect ratio, which is what us growing up in the 90s, we watched a lot of TV like that. And I don't know if the movie, when it comes out in theaters, is actually going to be like that, but if it is, it's really cool, because the mid-90s was an interesting era of growing up. It was, a lot of grunge, a lot of, animated shows were coming into its own. It was just kind of an era in between like the 80s and 2000s. The 80s were, the big era of like pop and like hair band metal and stuff like that. And then the 2000s were kind of where everything shifted with culture. You know, certain things became big, and the 90s were kind of stuck in this middle where it was just an interesting time, but it was like kind of a weird time, I guess. I don't know if that's the easiest way to put it, but it's cool to see that Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross are going to take on this, movie because, you know, Trent Reznor especially was huge in the 90s with like the Downward Spiral or, the stuff that had like March of the Pigs on it because that's like the era when he started becoming really popular. And it's cool to see maybe they're going to add their flavor of a 90s feel to that movie. So I'm really looking forward to it. If you haven't seen the trailer, like I said, if you haven't seen the trailer, definitely check it out because it's definitely a different, interesting, weird take on a movie. The way it looks like it's shot. So, like I said, that's pretty much it on the story. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really interested to see the kind of music that they're going to add to this movie because this is not, like I said, not a movie I would expect that they would have done, but it kind of makes sense with Trent, like I said, with Trent Reznor. So I told you yesterday about this Christmas horror story. It's going to be written by Marcus Dunstan and Patrick Melton. I told you how I was iffy on the whole idea of because what their pedigree is with like the Collector and Saw franchise. Well, I found out a report about this morning, but I kind of already knew that was happening. Guillermo del Toro is involved with a thing called Scary Stories to Tell You in the Dark, which is this anthology of series of books, which is it's really kind of horrifying that they let us read these as kids because the stuff they were delving with is like really intense stuff. I mean, the most famous story I think that ever came out of this series was a woman gets like an infection in her cheek and she can't figure out what it is. So she takes it to the doctor. The doctor's like, oh, it's nothing. It's probably just a swollen, maybe you got bit or something like that. So whatever, but she goes on, and all of a sudden spiders like explode from her cheek. It's really disgusting. And these are the kind of stories that we were reading as kids, so it kind of makes sense of why we're all messed up as kids from the 90s and 80s and whatnot. So, it's really cool that Guillermo del Toro is involved with this because his horror is very unique. Everything he's done with like Hellboy and with stuff like the Devil's Backbone or Chronos or Mimic or like I said, Pan's Labyrinth, all those types of movies, they had horror elements in it. But in the report it appears that Scary Stories to Tell from the Dark is officially filming soon with director Andre Alvadal. Apparently he worked on stuff like Troll Hunter and The Autopsy of Jane Doe. I'm really looking forward to this movie because we don't get a lot of horror anthologies. I guess John Dolezal is going to be working on it. If you ever seen James and the Giant Peach, it's an interesting anthology to get into because it could be really something special. It could be really something horrifying. The fact that Guillermo del Toro is involved with it, I'm really excited by it because it just gives that much more credence to the idea of what his feel and his design. And if you've ever seen Troll Hunters on TV, you kind of know what they're going for. So I don't know if that means they're going live action or they're going animated, but I really want to see some of these stories as either action or live action. And I think just the creepy tone of it could make it a classic, kids horror film in the essence of like a Goosebumps or something like that. But it's a little more dark than that. But just the fact that, we're getting these stories in movie adaptation is really cool. If you ever read any of these stories, that they could be extremely creepy, but they could be extremely fun. Like I said, I don't know why they let us read these stories as kids. It makes you wonder why they did, but the idea that they're going to turn them into movies and hopefully maybe kids movies, probably, I don't know how they're going to work it out, but I think it could be fun. It could be exciting. I'm looking forward to it. Guillermo del Toro is involved, and with his pedigree, with him just winning the Oscar for a monster movie, basically. I can't wait for it. So if you ever get a chance, definitely check out Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. There's like 3 or 4 books, and they're very disturbing, but they're awesome. They're very visual. They're just fun to read. So I'm glad, in base of the story, I'm glad that they're going to start filming soon because I really would like to see where they're going to go with this. So Bond 25, it's the next movie in the Bond franchise. It's crazy that there's 25 Bond films. It's been around for, 55 years or so when this new movie was supposed to come out. It had Danny Boyle attached to it. Daniel Craig was coming back. It had a perfect pairing because they had worked together before. Well, things happen. You see it all the time in Hollywood. Big budget movies lose directors because of conflict. You saw it with Star Wars Episode 9. Thank God Colin Trevorrow left because that's would not have worked out, as you can see from Jurassic World. It's learned yesterday, right after I recorded, of course, that Danny Boyle is leaving Bond 25, which sucks because Danny Boyle is an amazing director. If you've ever seen Trainspotting or Slumdog Millionaire or Sunshine or any of these movies, you know that he's perfect for a Bond film. And why he's leaving, no one will find out till later, but I have a feeling it's because the Broccoli's really pressured him to be a certain way, and he's like, I'm not doing that. I mean, if you look at like 125 hours, 124 hours, whatever it was, the man has a very unique style, and sometimes when you get like big series like Bond, and you get the creative power to it, they want things a certain way, and if they don't get their way, then it doesn't work out. It sucks because, like I said, Danny Boyle's an amazing director, and I'm pretty sure Daniel Craig was not happy about it. It's bad enough he really didn't even want to come back, but they paid him like $50 million to come back, so who's going to reject that kind of money? But it's interesting to see the stories that will come out in the future of why Danny Boyle left, because it's probably they wanted their vision. He had his vision, like I said earlier. He got angry about it. They got angry about it. They were clashing, probably yelling at each other. Probably not yelling at each other, but, emails probably what got involved. And we got this situation where he decided, I'm done with it. I'm leaving. So it does suck. It's sad to see. It would have been interesting to see a Danny Boyle Bond movie. But, as with things that happen in Hollywood, it's not going to happen. So what this means for Bond, if it's still going to come out next year, probably it will. It's probably set in stone on the date. But who they're going to have direct it now, we don't know. So when that comes up, I'm sure I'll talk about it. But, it sucks to see Danny Boyle leave Bond because it is definitely a franchise that's been revitalized since Casino Royale. It's not always been a hit in terms of a quality level, with last movie's Spectre. But, like I said, Danny Boyle could have brought something special to the part, but it happens. So our last news story is, I usually like to end it with like a picture or a poster because it's not really a news story, but it's just a cool image from a movie. I just kind of like to pass it along to you guys. But they posted a new picture of Nicole Kidman in a movie called Destroyer, where she plays a cop undercover with a gang who lived in the California desert. And I guess apparently it didn't end well. This is according to MSN, but I thought it was cool because Nicole Kidman's always an interesting actress to watch. She always has interesting looks to her, when she's something like Dogville or Eyes Wide Shut or The Hours, which she won an Oscar for. She's one of my favorite actresses because she just has a wide range of talent. She does everything from a Lars von Trier movie to like a Stanley Kubrick movie and so on and so forth. And it's fun. Like I said, I just wanted to show you this picture. It's not really much to see, but it's just cool to see her transformed into a different looking actress and how she does things. You don't get a lot of actresses who do these kind of things, and when they do, it's usually they're not very good. I think Charlize Theron in North Country was an interesting actress to look at, and you had like Natalie Portman and Jackie. And it's cool to see when actresses are willing to get down and dirty for their role, or they're willing to transform themselves. Because that's how you do it. I mean, look at like Charlize Theron in Monster. I mean, it was a completely different look to her. She gained a lot of weight. She stopped wearing makeup and that kind of thing. But, I just wanted to share this picture. Like I said, this movie looks interesting. The fact that she's playing a cop undercover, I think that could be an interesting Oscar-worthy story. So, but that's pretty much it. Like I said, there wasn't too much to talk about in the news at all. So with that, I wanted to go ahead and get into a history lesson. I hope you guys have enjoyed the last two that I did with cinematographers and casting directors. But today I want to talk about film editors. If you guys don't know what film editing is, it's basically what it sounds like. You're taking a film and you're editing it down. But what makes film editing so important is that's how you get the tone, or you get the pacing, or you get the idea of how the story's going to go. This is the part where the director worked closely with a certain individual outside the cinematographer to get how his vision to be made. There's some people that have like multiple projects, so they have to do it through like computer, which is much easier now. But basically, what the editor does is they get the rough form of the movie. Let's say the director has filmed like 8 to 10 hours of a movie. It could be more. There's some directors that like shoot like forever, a lot of stuff. A lot of reels and whatnot. So what the editor does is it takes all that footage and it kind of compartmentalizes it, or it puts it in a controlled area of like they break it down to what scene goes to what scene because they know what the script is asking for. So they put together a rough cut, which is the whole movie that they've shot into a rough form. And then the director comes in, looks at the film, and is like, I need it cut here, I need it cut here, can we shorten it here? And the editor's job is to take that film and cut it down. There's an interesting documentary that had Walter Murch in it, and he was editing Cold Mountain. And he basically took a scene and showed how he took small pieces of that scene and start whittling down to make a cohesive narrative. Because when you get the rough cut, when they've just finished filming, you have the narrative, but it's not always like perfect. There's long scenes where they're saying cut and action. There's setups, because they were starting to film right before the movie, is starting to be shot, the actual scene. So the editor's job is to whittle that down, but the director would say, M. Night Shyamalan posted on Twitter that he wanted certain scenes to be like smaller. He's like cut down 9, 10 scenes, like frames, because if you don't know, a scene is, or a second of film is 24 frames. So you're getting 24 whole frames. So you can cut down 9, frames of that 24 frames, and you get what I mean. The editor takes the film, he edits this down, and they whittle down to whatever length they want. If it's a Marvel movie, it could be 2 hours and 10 minutes. If it's a Scorsese movie, it could be 2 hours and 43 minutes. But if we think about it, I think I said the cinematographer is like the goalie, but the editor's really like the goalie. It's catching all the pucks, or it's like the catcher is catching all the balls, and it's making sure that the film is where it needs to be, where the director wants it to be. And the editor is important because if we don't have a properly edited film, and you see this a lot of time in movies, the product's gonna suck. I mean, it happens all the time. A movie's like edited weird, or I talk about it when I review. It's movies like edited weird, or it doesn't look right. And the best editors in the business know how to pace a movie like that, because you need the pacing to keep the audience's attention. And let's say you have visual effects, the visual effects crew needs to figure out where they're gonna place scenes. And when they have stuff that's not edited properly, or it doesn't look right, you have problems with the visual department, and the director's not happy, and so on and so forth. And that's why it's interesting to watch an editor work, because even though it's tedious, I mean, you watch like this, what I'm doing right now, and you don't realize it, but when I'm intercutting like video or pictures, there might be like 3 or 4 edits in there, because I need pacing. I have pacing problems, or I stumble when I talk, and you don't ever notice it because I have ways of magically disappearing, stuff like that. And this is the same thing when you watch a movie. Just watch a movie sometimes. Watch how they edit. Watch how, let's say, an action sequence was, I don't know, the Dark Knight sequence at the beginning. Watch how Christopher Nolan's editor takes a movie, and watch how he positions stuff, like he shoots things, but watch how it's edited in between. You could take any movie. You could take Star Wars. I mean, just watch how they edited the movie, and watch how they take scenes and how they make it affect you visually. I mean, it's pretty impressive. You don't think about it. It's like when you listen to music, you don't think about what the editor is doing. You don't think about what the composer is doing. But they're creating a mood and a visual mindset to keep you into that movie. And like I said, it doesn't always work. It's not always, perfect, but the fact that the editor's creating that mood and the fact that the director's helping the editor create that mood, it's an interesting idea, interesting way of doing things. I mean, there were times back in the 1900s to the 1920s where they really weren't even using editing, and it wasn't until certain movies that came out that the director's like, maybe we should edit this stuff down to get the effective feel of what we want, and that's what the editor ended up becoming. And it's interesting too because the history of editing involves a lot of women. Women. We always talk about how women need more prominent roles in anything. The entertainment industry or business. And it's interesting to see that most of the most famous films in history are directed by women. So you have like Anne V. Coates, who's well known for being a famous editor. She worked on stuff like Lawrence of Arabia. She worked on Out of Sight, What About Bob? And you see a lot of these. I mean, we'll go in like Thelma Schoonmaker, who is well known in the world as being one of the biggest film editors ever to grace our cinema. And she's worked with Martin Scorsese since the beginning of Martin Scorsese. I mean, you look at any film that's ever come out directed by Martin Scorsese, Thelma Schoonmaker is you know, the editor for his films, and it's just amazing to see that women have shaped the way we view movies, and yet we think of it as a man's world. I mean, it's just pretty impressive. And like I said, there are men who edit. Like I said, Walter Murch is definitely one that edits. I'll just give you a few other ones that are really well known. For instance, like Michael Kahn is Steven Spielberg's. He's been Steven Spielberg's editor forever. So any Steven Spielberg film you see, if you watch the way it's edited, a lot of times it looks the same because it's written or edited by the same person. So, but some of the bigger editors are people like Chris Lebanzon, who works with Tim Burton all the time. He's also a production designer, which is interesting. So you see a lot of his work in Tim Burton style, but you also get an editor and stuff like that. You got like Barbara McLean, who worked with Henry King a lot. Stuart Baird, who did do some directing, worked with Richard Donner. Lisa Lapstetter, who works with Woody Allen all the time. Russell Lloyd worked with John Huston. Craig Wood, who's a really well-known editor, works with Gore Verbinski. John Ottman worked with Bryan Singer, and he's a composer too, so he edits a lot of Bryan Singer's movies. And there's a lot more. I mean, there's pages and pages of editors who have worked with these different directors, and a lot of times a director will keep the same editor because they work together well. It's kind of like the cinematography. For instance, Steven Spielberg always works with the same editor. 99% of the time he works with the same cinematographer, same music or composer. And you see that a lot because they know how to work off each other. They know the feel. It's why movies by these directors are so well respected, so well done, because they have that uniqueness to them. They have that, they're kind of like a hockey team almost. They know how to work together and they learn how to work together. And that's why it's interesting to see how the editor works, because like I said, a director doesn't have a popular movie or a well-known movie if it isn't for the editor. So, that's pretty much the basis of the editor. Like I said, it's something that you could talk for hours about. You could go into each editor and talk to them about it. But I just want to kind of give you a basic lesson of what the editor does. I hope I'm successful at that, like with the other two. I hope I do a nice job explaining. I hope you learn a little bit something about the editor. So, but with that, we'll go ahead and head out. Thank you so much for checking out our YouTube channel. Thanks for checking out the movie news of the day. If you like what you see, always remember to check us out on YouTube, Audioboom, Facebook, Twitter. If you want to email us at nlapola1138@gmail.com. But with that, we're going to go ahead and head out for today, and we'll see you tomorrow, guys. Peace.